Shooting with an 85mm has become one of my absolute favorite things to do, whether that is taking headshots or shooting B-roll. I just love everything about the look, from the compression of the image to introducing foreground or taking photos. In all honesty, I think it's fair to say that I have become addicted to shooting with the 85mm. And right here I have the Zeiss Batis 85mm f1.8. Now this lens is one of my absolute favorite lenses out there. This lens is actually getting quite old. It's pushing 10 years now. But even though this lens is 10 years old, I still believe that this lens is one of the best 85s you can get out there right now. I'm gonna explain that at the end of this video, but before we go ahead and do that, we're gonna break this lens down, review it a little bit and see what it has to offer. But first things first, my name is Niclas, and if you decide to smash that like and subscribe button, that will be highly appreciated. And if you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. So starting off with the build quality here, we can definitely feel that we're holding a Zeiss lens, that we're holding something premium. The weather sealing on this lens is fantastic. It has this Zeiss signature ring, the blue rubber gasket, and the weight on this lens comes in at 457 grams. The focus ring feels good, it feels nice, smooth and responsive. This lens does not have a focus hold button, nor does it have an aperture ring or a manual focus switch, so this has to be changed inside the camera. On top here we have somewhat a gimmick. This is an OLED display that shows the distance at which the lens is focused. I've yet to find any use cases for this yet, and the filter thread size on this lens is 67mm. And lastly, this lens also comes with a pretty hefty lens hood as well. Alright, so image quality. Now, note that these photos were taken with the Sony ZV-E1, which only has a 12.5 megapixel sensor, so image sharpness isn't fully representative here. But let's look at the photos that we do have and see the differences. So at f1.8 we do have a lot of sharpness in the middle of the frame, but in the corners we do find a lot more softness. But when we stop down to f2.8 and f4 or f11, the softness goes away. We can get a pretty sharp image all over the frame. But if we step down to f16, we do get softer corners again. Now I also did test this lens on my APS-C camera, the ZV-10 Mark II, which has a 26 megapixel sensor. All the way from f1.8 up until f11, we get a super sharp image all over the frame. So for APS-C, this is easily a 10 out of 10. Now also, if you do decide to slam this on your APS-C camera, you will get an effective focal length of 127.5mm, which will give you pretty much the same look as you do get with the more standard 135mm. So I did take a couple of photos with a friend of mine showing you here, and I really like the compression and the look you can get out of this, to be honest. Alright, so let's touch on bokeh for a second. Now, this lens won't provide you the best bokeh balls that you've seen, but it does a fairly good job. In the center of the image, we do get some fairly nice round smooth balls, but as I said, they're not perfect. But when we head over to the corners, we see that it does suffer a lot more from those cat eyes. But overall, I have to say I really like the bokeh on this lens. I find it to be very smooth and pleasing. I think it has a creamy, good, nice background blur, and just overall I really like how the image is rendering. Now for the autofocus, I knew already beforehand that this lens isn't known to have the fastest autofocus out there, but to be honest, with all my testings here, I found the autofocus to be outstanding, if I'm going to be completely honest, and this made me curious, so I did multiple tests. I went back to a more darker scene where I didn't have as much light. The performance here as well was just extraordinary, so I did test it again with a highly underexposed setting, and again here, not as fast as the other ones, but again it was performing exceptionally here as well. Now I will also say that this was shot with the ZV-E1, which has the newer AI processor with amazing autofocus capabilities as well, so you have to keep that in mind. Now unfortunately, this lens does suffer quite a bit from focus breathing, so even if your camera has focus breathing compensation, this is not a native Sony lens, so sadly you cannot use that. Now in bright light, this lens does suffer quite a bit from flaring, so if you're shooting against the sun or any sort of bright light, I would highly recommend to keep that big lens hood as I showed you guys earlier on. Now this lens also provides something called OSS or Optical SteadyShot. Now this is me shooting handheld with the OSS turned off versus turned on. Alright, so lastly we have to talk a little bit about the price. This lens does have a hefty price tag in my opinion. Here in Norway it goes for 16,000 Norwegian kroners, which is a little bit above $1,400. I think this is a very hefty price considering this lens is 10 years old and it's also an f1.8 lens. So, do I recommend buying this lens? Well, I don't think you should get this lens new. If you can get this lens on the used market on the other hand, for a good price, which there are plenty of right now, I think that is the way to go. So I said at the beginning of this video also that this is one of the best. So when I say that, I'm thinking about the Sony G-Master Mark 1 and 2. Now, I don't know about the Mark II, to be honest. I haven't tested the Mark II. I don't know too much about the Mark II. Now for the Mark 1 on the other hand, I don't really like that lens. I think it's big, it's bulky. I don't like it. And the other lens to consider here is the Sigma 85 f1.4. Now for photography, maybe that lens is a better choice because of that extra sharpness, and also it opens up all the way to f1.4. Now for video on the other hand, I believe that this lens just might be the best 85 you can get. Now hopefully this video brought you some sort of value. Now feel free to let me know in the comment below what your favorite 85mm lens is. And also don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button before you leave. Take care and have a good one.